I know if I had gotten into a serious relationship in my 20s, not only would I be married by now, but I would have kids already, and I would hate my life. I would be miserable. I would be unhappy. Hey y'all, it's your girl Key Simone, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to another episode of Baddie Chats. Because y'all know my favorite thing to do on here, even though I've only done it once, is to take trending topics from TikTok and discuss them on this channel from a queer perspective. And today we're going to talk about why I chose to be child free and how making a conscious decision in my 20s not to date seriously or get into a serious romantic relationship directly resulted in me realizing by the time I was turning 30 that I did not want to have children. So let's chat about it. And this topic comes from a content creator on the app. I think her name is It's a Girl, or It's Just a Girl, or Just a Girl, or something like that. She's not well liked. But she made a video about how women in their 20s should really pay attention to how they present themselves and how they move in the world and decisions that they make, especially romantically in their 20s, because it directly impacts how your life is in your 30s and your 40s. And from that conversation came a conversation about how women in their 20s who are in college should not only be focused on getting a degree, but focus on getting a man. Because once you leave college, it's much harder to find a partner who's on the same level as you, not just professionally, but financially and emotionally. And that if you find someone in college, you guys are basically equally yoked because you guys both are in college, which there's a lot of faults in that, okay? And why that part of the conversation was triggering for me, because I know if I had gotten into a serious relationship in my 20s, not only would I be married by now, but I would have kids already, and I would hate my life. I would be miserable. I would be unhappy because I am one of those people, and I don't think it's rare, I just don't think it's talked about often, who never had life goals of getting married, having kids, owning a home, serving a partner, whether that be a man or a woman. Like, that was never on my vision board. Like, when I think about my 16-year-old self, my 14-year-old self, my big goals in life were always my career and my happiness. My career, in my happiness, in my health, in those order. Maybe not in that order, but those were the three core pillars for me in my future. I never strived to want to be married and want to be someone's wife. I never had the passion to be a mom. I've never had the feeling in my body or in my heart or in my ovaries like, oh, I really want a baby. I think when I've talked about having kids and naming kids, it's because it's like a cute, fun thing to do with the person that you like. Look, I'm gonna have your babies. I'm gonna name these babies this, right? But when I really started to think down deep inside, I knew it wasn't the journey for me. And again, I don't think I would have come to that realization if I had been dating more seriously in my 20s. Growing up, not just in my household, but just in my life, I saw a lot of long-term but toxic relationships. And it made me realize very early on that a lot of people, both men and women, will choose to be in unhealthy romantic dynamics so that they're not alone. And I knew that was never going to be part of my story. I have always been someone who will break up with you if I'm not happy, okay? Because for me, life is too short, and there are way too many people in this world to stay in something that is toxic. Also, another big factor for me when I was dating as a young adult going into college, I didn't want to have kids young. So both my mom and my sister had kids young, and talked to me about the struggles of having kids young. My mom had my older sister when she was 18. She was in the military. She did get married soon after, so she wasn't doing it alone. She had actually a really good big community in Europe, where she was stationed in Germany, but she also was 18. And by the time my mom was 23, she had 2 more kids, me and my brother. So my mom was barely legal to drink with 3 kids, a husband, a military career, a household, and bills. That's a lot, you know what I'm saying? And so while she's now in her 50s with nobody in the home, all of her 20s and 30s and some of her 40s were spent raising children. Okay? My sister, similar story. She had my oldest nephew when she was 18, fresh in college. By the time she was in her mid-20s, she had 2 more kids. Now she has 5 in total. And both of them have talked to me about how hard it was, even though they both were married, they both had communities, they both had support, being young moms and all the things that they couldn't do because they were young moms. And both my mom and my sister are educated. My mom actually has a master's degree. She was the first person in our family to have a master's degree, and she's thinking about getting her doctorate. So it's not like she's not goals. My mom makes big bank, okay? She took great care of us. I grew up comfortable, but she also had 3 kids at 23 years old. And that is a very hard life to live no matter how much support you have. So going into high school and dating and like really getting to liking boys and eventually girls, that was always in the back of my mind. So I didn't even have adult relations until I was almost out of high school. I was a pretty late bloomer because I was scared of getting pregnant. And once I could get on birth control, I immediately did because I wanted to avoid it at all costs, okay? And like I talked about in my coming out story, I did have a boyfriend my freshman year of college, and he had a child. And I remember him being like, I would love for you to have my baby. And I'm like, I'm in college. Like, what are we talking? I'm 18 years old. I've been in college for less than 6 months. What's going through your brain? And he's like, well, you didn't have to take care of it. Like, you can have the baby. I'll take care of it. And we'll just do this together. And I'm like, you are out of your goddamn mind if you think that I'm going to have a child, 1, and 2, that I'm going to have a child that I will then give to you to take care of. I already knew I didn't want to be a young mom. I had always thought that like, if I was going to be a mom, I would have my kids after I was establishing my career and when I was in my late 20s. I had already knew that's how I felt. Like after that relationship ended, I did not get into another serious relationship for a very, very long time. I came from a very sheltered life. Like I mentioned before, living on a military base is the equivalent of like going to boarding school, except for you just never leave. So you're like in this little town or on this campus by yourself. For us, it was a base. You're not exposed to the outside world really that much. You're exposed to the culture that's created on the base. And so there was just so much life for me to learn and culture for me to learn and things for me to figure out and like just experimenting, exploring in adult ways, drinking, partying. Like us being bad when we lived in Japan was like going to the 800 area, drinking and smoking paper. Like us being bad was sneaking at 12 a.m. to talk to guys online from other bases. Like, so when I got to college, I'm like, I just want to live. So I 100% was on some hoe shit. I was having a good time. I was dating. I was doing adult stuff, being safe and protected, but like having a good time. I partied so hard my freshman year of college that I lost one of my scholarships and was put on academic probation because I was doing everything but going to class. But I just was like away from my parents for the first time in my life, living on a school campus, figuring out my sexuality, figuring out like what my identity was. I was having the time of my life. I mean, freshman year was amazing to me. And so being in a relationship was just never on my radar at all. And then when I transferred school, so when I went from College of Charleston to Howard University, which was the best decision I've ever made in my life, my priorities switched from partying, living life, doing all the things I couldn't do when I lived on a military base to figuring out what I was going to do with my future and professionally. And so when I transferred, I didn't live on campus. I didn't join any campus clubs. I definitely didn't date on campus because at that point I was more gay than I wasn't, and I didn't really know how to identify other gay people yet. And so I was really just focused on like, I would go to class and I would leave, right? And so dating wise, I would date online a lot, like through Twitter. Back at this point, this is like 2013, 2014, 2015. Yeah, 2012. It was like 2012, 2013, 2014. This is when Twitter started to become really popular. This is when Black lesbian Twitter started to really get legs. And this is when you start to like, you'd have your Twitter wife and your Twitter husband and you flirt with people on tweets and stuff. You meet people. That's how I started. That's how I was dating. That's why I dated some people from North Carolina because I met them all on Twitter. And so dating long distance, unless you're truly committed, Like, unless that's like your partner and you're putting effort, it's very easy to get very nonchalant. You're not talking every day. You're not seeing each other every day. You're not spending a whole bunch of time with each other. You have to make the effort. So it's very easy to like not really be in it. And so that's why long distance relationship became my thing, because when I wanted to talk to somebody and have that companionship, I could. But when I wanted to do my own thing, I would. And in my opinion, dating both men and women want to be in relationships way more than men do. So out of all the men that I've dated, of the time I was dating men, only 3 of them asked me to be their girlfriends. Whereas women, especially when I was younger, everybody wanted me to be their girlfriend. And I'm not trying to brag, but like they wanted to lock me down. And I don't even think because they saw a future with me or anything like that, but just because they like wanted to be in a relationship. Lesbians move fast. They always think they're in love. They always think that's going to be their wife. And we couldn't even legally get married at that time. So it was silly. But I just think I remember dating this girl. Her name was Boss. She was from North Carolina. I met her on Twitter. And I don't remember her first name. Starts with a D. But if my friends see this, they're going to know exactly who Boss is. And me and Boss, we met on Twitter. We met during homecoming. The only time I went to GHO, I met her. One of the drunkest I've ever been in my life. Crazy. And not because of the homecoming, just because of me and my friend. We drink like E and J. And we had been dating and hanging out. She was coming up to DC all the time. We spent all this time together, talking on the phone and stuff like that. And she was like, I really like you, Key. I'm really into you. I want you to be my girlfriend. And I was just like, no. Like, I distinctly remember the conversation because I was living in Virginia with my mom and my stepdad. And she was like, I want you to be my girlfriend. I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I'm 20 years old. Like, I am a baby. I was like, I just started dating women. I'm barely in this community. I don't think I should immediately get into a relationship. Like, I don't even know what type of women I like. I don't even know like what I'm interested in, what I'm attracted to. Like, there's just so much about my sexuality and my identity as a lesbian that I have to figure out. I won't be able to do that dating you seriously. And it's not because I don't like you. I just don't think that that's what I should be doing. I also was super focused on my academics. So like, to me, relationships can be very distracting, especially when you're younger and you don't know how to balance like your emotions and like your priorities in life. Like, it can be very distracting. So I was just like, yeah, no, thank you. Like, we can just keep casually dating. I'm fine with that, but I don't want to be in a relationship with you. And that was my perspective through most of my early 20s. After I turned like 21 and I graduated and stuff like that, like, I spent my weekends at brunch, at hookah bars, at day parties with my gay friends having a good time, okay? I dated around, and it got to the point where not only like within my friend group, but with my family, that I was known for not committing. I was known for dating multiple people for a very short amount of time. I would just date around and have a good time, and I wasn't committing to anybody. I didn't have a girlfriend again until I dated this girl in New York. Is that right? Or was it the one in New Orleans? I don't know if I count the one from New Orleans, because I think we were girlfriend and girlfriend for like a week and a half. So New York, because me and the girl from New York dated for like 4 months. So, and that was in 2016? No, 2017. Because I was living in my apartment. So 2017. So that was in 2017. 2018? I don't know. 2018. It was a long time. Okay, so from 2015 like 2018, like, I was just having a good time in the streets. Bop, 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 bop. You know what I'm saying? And so after dating the girl in New York, that was my girlfriend. We break up. And then I get into my first, what I consider, serious adult relationship. The girl in New York, we were dating for 4 months, but we were long distance. We met on Twitter. It kind of just happened. I don't know if we really liked each other. I don't know if we had any in common. Like, we were never going to be serious. I don't think we were ever going to get married. So I don't consider it a serious relationship. It was a relationship. I'm not going to downplay it, but I don't think it was a serious relationship. I didn't get into a serious relationship until my ex that I talked about in my last video, my coming out story video. I'm not sure. We lived together, and we were, in my opinion, very serious. And we talked about our future in a very serious way, because obviously we had already made the big decision of living together, which was premature for sure. And then we talked about marriage. We talked about having kids, because they were already married before, had been divorced, and they wanted to get married again, and they definitely wanted to have children. That was something that they expressed to me from the very beginning of us meeting each other and the very beginning of us dating. And I thought that I wanted to give them those things, right? I definitely thought that because I was in love. But when we were quarantined together and really got to know each other, because you don't really know someone until you're stuck in a house with them and you cannot leave. And then I live in a 640 square foot apartment, 1 bedroom, very tight quarters. It pushed me into this role of like homemaker, wife, caretaker. With them getting furloughed, they also got depressed, which I've talked about. And so like I had to take care of myself and then also take care of them. And I hated it. I hated it. I absolutely hated the entire setup. I hated that like I was taking care of a household, including another person who wasn't taking care of themselves. And I just started thinking about like, what if we were married? Or like, what if we had kids? Like, what if this had happened and we were married with kids? Like, I would be taking care of them and the kids and the house and myself and the bills. I was cooking dinner. I was cleaning. I was tending to their needs emotionally. I was still working my job. I was trying to take care of myself. Like, it was, you know, doing their laundry. I'm just like, I don't know if this is the life that I want. Like, I'm like, I don't know. Honestly, after them and I broke up, I thought like I might be single for the rest of my life. Now we know that's not what happened. We know that's not what happened. But I thought like, I don't know if like being in a partnership like this is for me. And I thought, you know what? This is your first time being in a serious relationship. Maybe it's just very new to you. Maybe you just don't like really get kind of, you know, what is needed in it. Like I was pretty selfish at that point because I had been single for such a long time and had only been worried about myself for such a long time that having to worry about somebody else was a very hard transition for me, even though I really loved them. Maybe it's just a learning curve. But then the following year, I started dating someone who had a child. And it wasn't like I was active in their child's life. We dated on and off for quite a bit. And I hadn't met their child and all those things, but I wasn't like, we were long distance, so I wasn't around every single day or like a very active part of their child's life, but they did have a child. And I really, through that experience, got a taste of what it would be like to have a child or to be a part of the experience where a child is involved. I started to see the responsibility of a child right in front of my face in a way that I hadn't before. And it was like a wake-up call. When I was around a child, it didn't naturally feel like I was like falling into a maternal role or had that energy. Like it was just like, hey baby, like hello child. Like I was so awkward, not uncomfortable because he's like such a sweet baby, but like awkward because it just didn't come natural to me. And I knew that eventually she wanted to get into a serious relationship and she wanted to expand her family. And while at that point I told myself like, okay, once your career gets into a certain spot, you can start dating seriously because you'll have the time for it. And so I was in that place, like literally when her and I started talking, I was like, hey, I'm looking for a relationship. I'm like ready to get serious. And she's like, so am I. So even though it turned out to be not a serious relationship, we started dating with the intentions of like seeing if we could be serious with each other. Dating her and being around her as a mother made me realize that not only did I relate to it, I didn't yearn for it and I didn't want it, right? And so it was a realization that I didn't want kids. And again, not because of her as a mother or her child, just to make that very clear, but just because being around the responsibility of the child made me realize that I didn't want any parts of it. And that was a big pill to swallow because up to that point, I thought at the very least I would have one child. Like I knew I didn't want to have multiple kids, but like, okay, I have one child and I have my child like in my late 20s to my early 30s. I'll get married, all of the things. And I'm like, oh, actually, no, I don't want that. And it definitely did impact my dating. And this is just my opinion and I have a theory, but I think a lot of masculine women who are queer want to have children because they are either trying to create the feminine dynamics that they did not have before or rebuild the ones that they enjoy. And I think I've talked about this before, I'm not sure. And so almost everyone that I've dated up until my current girlfriend wanted children. And I would have to be like, I don't think I want kids. And they would kind of look at me like, okay, well, I want kids. And I, again, don't believe in dating with someone just to be in a relationship with them. So when I get to a point with somebody where I realize like we don't have a future or we don't want the same things, I think that we should break up unless we both can agree to something casual where no one feels negatively impacted that it's not going to get more serious, which is very rare. Me and the girl who had a kid had that type of dynamic where we kind of came to a point where like, this is not going to be serious, but we enjoy each other's company enough and we're friends enough at that point to where we can continue to date casually. That's what we did until we didn't. And when we stopped dating, it was just like, okay, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of people aren't like that. And now we're both in very serious relationships because that is ultimately what we wanted. We just didn't get it from each other. But a lot of people are not like that. A lot of people want serious relationships and they want a wife, they want a kid. And not only do they want kids, but they want someone who is going to take care of the household and take care of them and play that role. And while I thought for most of my 20s that was the role I was eventually going to play, like I knew I didn't want to have kids young. And I knew I wanted to have my career first, but I thought I wanted to get married and have kids and take care of the household. And by the time I got to like 28, 29, all of that had changed. I didn't want kids. I didn't want to buy a house and take care of a house. I don't want to play the role of wifey. I don't want to be the person coming home from a long day at work and then cooking you dinner and then doing the laundry and then cleaning the house and then like making sure you're tucked into bed. I lived the life, didn't enjoy it. And so I had to start having some really hard conversations with myself, with the people I was dating, with my family who expect me to have kids. I'm like, listen, I don't think this is going to happen for me. Like, the older I get, the more I don't want to have children. And when it comes to marriage, like, I don't mind getting married, but I want to get married in a very non-traditional way. I want to have a micro wedding, similar to how my best friend did with her husband. Small wedding, very goth. I don't want to change my last name legally at all. And I don't want to get married and immediately buy a home and get a dog and build a garden. As I'm dating, I'm realizing that like, oh, it might be a little difficult to find someone who also doesn't want children because most people want kids. So it wasn't until I met my current partner. And like one of the things that really stood out to me about her when we met and started talking was we had very similar views of the future. We feel very similar about children and the future of having kids and like how a dynamic will be in the household. She cooks for me. She cleans actually more than I do. I can come into her home and do absolutely nothing. Like I literally can walk into her house and just exist. I'll walk in, she'll have the candy I like, the wine I like, the food I like, the yogurt I like. She'll have my clothes that I leave our house completely washed, ready to go. I literally can walk into her house and just exist. The same way she could walk into my house and just exist. And I think that when we're together, we balance each other very well in that way. She doesn't make me feel like I have to take care of the home. We equally take care of each other when we're in each other's home. And I think that when we live together, it'll be the same vibe. And so I say all this to say that I think that had I got into those very serious relationships when I was in my 20s, had I spent my time at Howard looking for a partner, I probably would have gotten married because I thought in my 20s, I wanted to get married. And I probably would have had a child because I thought in my 20s, my early 20s, that I wanted to have a child. But if I had not lived that life and dated the way I dated and did all the things I did and like gone through all those experiences, dating someone for child and dating people who had already been married and all of those things, I went ahead and realized that I didn't want any of that, especially the child part. Now I'm in the space where I'm like, I'm childless by choice and I will remain that way. I don't think it will ever change. I gut check with my girlfriend every couple months being like, hey, like, do you still not want to have kids, right? Like, you're not like not having kids because of me. Because if she wanted to have a child, we would break up. Because I know it's not what I want. And I would not compromise on that part of my life. I think it's very dangerous to tell young women, and frankly young men too, that they should spend their 20s looking for their life partner so that they're not lonely in their 30s and 40s. Because even if you get married in your 20s, you can still be lonely in your 30s and your 40s, because who you are in your 20s is not who you are when you're in your 30s, and not who you are when you're in your 40s, and not who you are when you're in your 50s. I feel like meeting my person at 30 sets me up so much better for my life moving forward, because I am basically fully developed up here, emotionally, physically. I know what I want. I know what I need. I know what I'm looking for. I have a very good grasp on like what I need in my life romantically. I could not have said that in my 20s. I'm such a better version and stronger and like more confident version of myself. And I'm like the best version of myself I've ever been at 32 than I was at 22 or any age of my 20s. But I don't think I would have had those experiences if I hadn't lived the life I lived in my 20s. So yeah, that's my spill, as I always say after a baddie chat. So y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Make sure y'all like, share, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.